Love and justice. These are two grand words that represent two very weighty concepts. I'm not going to be able to do justice to both of them in such a short episode. However, I'm going to be so bold as to present a few ideas that have been kicking around in my head lately. We seem to have two very different attitudes toward these two concepts. We seem to want love, demand it even, but justice? Well, maybe for other people, but not so much for ourselves. Many people explicitly believe that only God can judge them, in the sense that they believe that no one has the right to put him or herself above another in the act of judgment. All humans are created equal, after all, so they say. Therefore, human judgment is a kind of arrogant usurpation of God's place, which belief gives rise to all kinds of contempt for earthly institutions. And I can see where these people are coming from. Earthly institutions have a long history of abusing the power entrusted to them to execute justice. And justice, absolutely, in its highest sense, can be understood as coming from God. However, the exact same things could be said about love. Love, absolutely, in its highest sense, can be understood as coming from God, and many abuses have been perpetuated in its name. My point is that the common objections against justice aren't unique to that idea. They can be applied to pretty much any and every moral good. But this collectively puts us in a very strange position. We refuse to be judged by people, especially because judgment so often comes with consequences or even punishments that are experienced as painful, but we expect love from people. That is, we expect people to be divine in their capacity to love, but not in their capacity to judge, which is very peculiar. We are collectively saying, I want the good stuff now, and I'll take the bad stuff in the next life, if there is one. And in any case, I'll be banking on God being a merciful distributor of justice. Now, this is very interesting for several reasons. In the first place, when people begin to love, to truly and deeply love, we often say that they become increasingly divine. It's as if by channeling more of this divine quality, they become more divine themselves. So why wouldn't the same be true of justice, which even the naysayers contend is a divine attribute? In fact, that's pretty much their entire argument for rejecting its earthly manifestation. When people begin to judge correctly, to truthfully and accurately and dispassionately judge, I believe that they can also become more divine. God is multifaceted, so there is more than one way to approach the higher power. He's not just one good quality. He is many good qualities, and none of the many good qualities that he is requires modification. What does that mean? Well, the justice I'm talking about here is not social justice. How could it be? Justice is good enough as it is. It is not improved with the modifier. The highest goods are always words that are diminished through modification, like love. How would you feel if you asked your partner, hey, do you love me? And he or she responded, actually, I'll do you one better. I love you socially. I have social love for you. Would you consider that an improvement over he or she saying, I love you? I think you would be hard-pressed to find someone who would agree. By the same token, social justice is not an improvement on justice. Like social love is a denigration of love, social justice is a denigration of justice. And it's a denigration because it's an attempt to adulterate justice with a kind of misguided, limp-wristed kind of love. It is justice to a point, which of course is not justice, especially if that point can be breached so frequently and with so little consequence. Introducing my innovative first novel, Starry Night. Step into the world of painter Vincent van Gogh. Genius, sinner, prophet, madman. Relive the final 10 weeks of his life in this breathtaking tale of art, love, loss, and meaning, and challenge what you think you know about life and relationships. Once you see through Vincent's eyes, the world will never look the same again. Starry Night, now available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. The links are in the description. We don't like to admit this, but it is possible for two goods, like love and justice, to come into conflict with each other. This actually happens all the time, and it is the crux of every great moral dilemma, from the Bhagavad Gita and the Greek tragedies through to the modern day. Justice is essentially based on values and the laws from which they are derived. It presumes that everyone, from the meanest beggar to the highest king, must surrender to them without exception. On the other hand, love, at least as most people understand it, basically argues that there are extenuating circumstances. Let us be merciful. Let us bend the rule. Let us forego the application of this consequence. Hasn't this individual suffered enough? Have pity and soften your heart. And this is why love will kind of always be something of a rebellious, antisocial force. Love has contempt for rules and order. It will not only love where it is allowed. It will not only love where it is permitted. Love is the spontaneous force of union, and so cannot be constrained by laws. Love is chaotic and anti-establishmentarianism. Now, we could make the argument that love is a kind of necessary chaos that prevents our institutions from becoming too rigid or ossified, but we have to make peace with the understanding that love essentially seeks exception from established law. I mean, that's what made the teachings of Jesus so radical. No longer should we take an eye for an eye, but endeavor to turn the other cheek. And this conflict is amplified when we understand that love is for individuals, while justice is for societies. It is very, very hard to hold people accountable to certain laws if you prioritize love over justice. Love will always put the individual above the society. It will ask society to make the exception, not the individual. But it's justice that keeps societies together. And as long as the individual needs society, the individual is actually threatened, albeit indirectly, by being prioritized over and above society. This is why Socrates drank the hemlock. He understood that the abuse of power in his particular case was less important than the individual's surrender to law in general. His followers, who loved him, urged him to escape his punishment with many reasonable, persuasive arguments. However, escape would undermine society, the rule of law, and it may well be that the average Athenian needed Athens more than the average Athenian needed Socrates. This is an uncomfortable attitude for the modern individual, which is why the West is falling apart. We have fallen into the collective delusion that the individual, or more precisely, certain individuals who are primarily defined by their demographic characteristics, should come before the law. That love that seeks exception should trump justice, which is universal. If you recall, this was functionally the defense for monarchy for hundreds of years. This is why the Magna Carta was so important. It was the reemergence of the social ideal that no individual, not even a royal, not even a king, is above the law, is above justice. And the work of the last millennia has been to realize that ideal. However, the last few decades have significantly undermined that progress. Now we have multiple caste systems. Elites who, like royals, are above the law, protected identity categories, which are kind of beneath it, and everyone else. You see this very obviously in the Bay Area. There is a growing underclass of society that is functionally exempt from all laws. Many people believe that applying justice to these people would simply be a form of cruelty. So we'll let love win. We'll functionally allow them to do whatever they want without consequences. And let me tell you, that's not loving. It's also not helping them, and it's certainly not good for society as a whole. It is the result of a mushy-headed, uncritical perversion of love that would rather society fall apart, which will ultimately endanger every individual they're attempting to protect, than hold people accountable for their actions. It is completely destroyed with even a little rational thinking. If it's possible to approach godliness with respect to our ability to love one another, which no one seems to have a problem with, then why wouldn't it be possible to approach godliness in our capacity to implement justice? After all, justice is also an attribute of the divine. In my opinion, we do not need a modified justice like social justice. We need better execution of justice. And what justice essentially is, and has always been, is equal treatment under law. Equal treatment. The show has it wrong. It's not love that's blind. It's justice. Justice doesn't see your class or your race or your gender or your circumstances. It is the impartial and dispassionate administration of order. And while you could possibly argue that the social justice movement is a reaction against an oppressive or corrupt form of justice in the past, which inspired a kind of love to emerge to disrupt this order with its chaos, I think we can safely say that the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction, and we will soon be entering into a corrective period. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And please, send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message, because it's word-of-mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. I know you know someone who's into this kind of stuff and needs to hear this. Other value propositions, anyone looking to join my free weekly newsletter, for which I write original content, no AI, or book a paid one-on-one consultation with yours truly, can learn more on my website. There are also my books, The Value of Others, in which I explore my economic model of relationships, and Starry Night, my first novel that explores the final weeks of painter Vincent van Gogh, and my private member community, The Captain's Quarters, where, among other things, I host bi-monthly group consultation calls with a wonderful group of people. A lot of value there. Check them all out if you are so inclined. The links to everything are in the description below. As always, I appreciate your support, and thank you for listening.